Hi guys, welcome and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new on this channel, my name is Ivy. I'm a registered nurse who is currently here in the UK. Welcome to my channel. On this channel we talk about nursing, lifestyle, vlogs and all those nice things. Yeah, so please do want to subscribe, comment down below, share the video, like the video, and if this is the type of content that you love to watch, stick around. Okay, so guys, today I'm going to be talking about a very interesting topic. Yeah, so as you can see from the title of the video, I'm going to be talking about the NHS interviews that are commonly asked, NHS interview questions that are commonly asked during an interview. Yeah, so first and foremost, the most important thing is before you attend an interview, you have to prepare for the interview. Okay, the same way we study for an exam, prepare for the interview. On the day of interview, make sure that you have your passport with you, because that is going to be your proof of identification. And also you should ensure that there's proper network where you are, because as an international nurse, obviously your interview is going to be online, so you need to be in a place where the network is perfect, because if the network is not okay, internet is not fine, then your interview is going to be a flop. Yeah, so ensure that you find a place where there is perfect interview. And also the other thing is the room where you're doing your interview from should have proper lighting. Okay, so you should ensure that there's proper lighting, so that even as you are doing that interview, the interviewer is able to see you properly. Yeah, so ensure there's proper lighting in the room where you are, and also it should be quiet. So let's say, for example, you are doing your interview from home in your room and there are small children at home. Just ensure that you just, make sure they're not around when you're doing your interview, because you do not need any form of distractions, because like this is a very important interview. Yeah, and also depending on which media you're going to use, make sure that you have it. And yeah, if you're doing an interview, they're going to tell you in advance what you're supposed to have, whether it's Zoom or Team. So most of them use the Team, but anyway, that depends with the hospital or the employer where you're going. Yeah, so I'm going to get into the video. So if this is the type of content that you like, please stick around, because it is important for you to know and have an idea on the type of questions to expect on the day of interviews. Okay, so before I came here, I attended about 4 interviews with 4 different hospitals, and the questions that I was asked were similar. Quite all right, they might be phrased in a different manner, but then the questions were the same. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about commonly asked questions during an interview. And believe me, the time you'll be attending your interview, some of these questions, you're going to find them, if not all of them. Yeah. So the first most commonly asked question during an interview is, the interviewer is going to ask you to introduce yourself and tell them about your experience. So they'll be like, introduce yourself or tell us about your experience as a nurse so far. Or they'll tell you to give a brief history about your career and experience. So you see, this is one question, but it's phrased in 2 different ways. So when they ask you to talk about yourself, they're not asking you to say if you're married, if you have children, where you grew up, and all those things. So what they simply want you to do is talk about your nursing. You can start talking about your nursing school, when you started your nursing school, how long you were there, and also talk about the institutions or hospitals where you have worked before. Yeah, so you can talk about your experience, what you did in those hospitals, talk about 1 or 2 things that you learned or gained from those institutions. That way, you're going to give you're going to leave a positive impact on the interviewer. So yeah, they'll ask you to talk about yourself, give a brief history of your nursing career and all those things. So simply you can talk about the schools where you attended, the institutions where you worked, talk about your experience, the things you did in those hospitals, and also talk about 1 or 2 things that you learned from the different places that you worked from. Yeah, so watch out for that question. Yeah, so the next commonly asked question is, they're going to ask you, why do you want to work in the UK? Of course, that's a very important question, I believe. Yeah, so the interviewer is going to ask you, why do you want to come and work in the UK? Yeah, so when answering that question, you start with the most important things, of course, and then the other things will come later. By the most important things, I mean, you can give answers such as, you want to come and work in the UK because of career progression. Of course, you want to progress in your career. You can say you want to improve your experiences by working in a different environment. You can say that you want to learn about new things, such as, like we have different equipment, we have different ways of doing things, so you want to learn about all those things which are advanced. Yeah, and they'll be impressed because, in as much as you want to come and see the UK and all those things, but you want to come and work in the UK because you want to learn more, you want to improve your experience, you want to learn about the advanced technology that they use here in the UK, you want to improve your career and all those things. And then later, after talking about these important things, you can now talk about, you want to travel, it's to be an opportunity for you to travel, you want to learn about a different culture and all those things. Yeah, but yeah, I'm just giving you a brief example of how to answer these questions, but you have to go and research more on how you can answer these questions so that your answers are broad. Okay, so the next question that you are likely to be asked is, they're going to ask you, why do you want to work for this particular NHS trust? So they'll ask you why you want to work for their hospital. Very important question. So when you get an interview invite from a hospital, please make sure that you research about the hospital, know about their values, know about what they believe in. Yeah, that's very important, because some interviewers are going to ask you to talk about the values of that particular hospital. So imagine a situation where you're going for an interview and then you know nothing about that hospital. It's going to be very embarrassing, of course. So they'll ask you why you want to work for them, why you chose their hospital in particular. So you can talk about the values, and then also you can also research on them. You talk about good things like, I love the way you treat your international nurses, I love the support that you give to international nurses, and your trust is very diverse, it has got nurses from different backgrounds and all those things, and I feel when I join your trust I'll be able to fit in, and all those good things. Yeah, so talk about that. Then the next question they are likely to ask you is, mostly when they're asking you questions, they will ask you scenario type of questions. But they'll ask you questions like, how will you handle a patient on the ward with respiratory conditions? So you see such type of question, just know that they're talking about infection control. So you can talk about face masks, gowning, protective isolation, barrier isolation, standard isolation, you can talk about hand washing. They want to know what you as a nurse can do to ensure that there's infection control on the ward or in the hospital. So they'll ask you that type of question. Yeah, and then the next question that you can expect is, they're going to ask you about the duties of a nurse in the UK. So nursing is the same. Nursing is the same back home. Nursing in the UK is the same. You learn about the same things. So of course the duties of a nurse. So you're going to talk about the duties of a nurse. Yeah, you outline them: taking care of patients, giving medication, catheterization. All those things that you do as a nurse, making sure that you create a safe environment for patients and relatives, all those things, you talk about them, you know them, because they're a very intelligent nurse. Yeah. And then they'll also ask you questions like, how would you handle a needle prick injury at work? You know, so you see, these questions are not even very difficult. They are simple questions that you know, questions that you'll be able to answer. So what do you do when there's a needle prick injury at work? So you are going to wash your hands through the running water. You're going to report to the manager, of course. Here, everything that happens, you have to report to the manager. You have to detext. By detexting, I mean you have to write an incident report. Yeah, you do all those things. So research about all these things. So like I said, I'm just giving you brief answers, but you do your research so that when it's time for you to answer those questions, you have a lot of things to talk about. And then they can also ask you about the 6 C's of nursing. That's the NMC code. So if you've done your CBT, you know these 6 C's. So there's compassion, communication, courage, commitment, competence, care. So know them, because they'll ask you these questions. And then after they ask you about the 6 C's, they can also ask you to say, from the 6 C's, pick 1 C and talk about it. Like, as a nurse, how would you handle yourself? Like, how, as a nurse, how can you relate to the C that you are picking? Let's say, for example, you talk about commitment. As a nurse, what does commitment mean, or what does it entail? You get? So you can talk about being a nurse. I'm supposed to be committed to my career. I'm committed to my patients, committed to what I'm supposed to do. You can talk about compassion. I remember they asked me this question. I talked about compassion. Yeah, that was the C that I picked. So they'll ask you to pick any of the 6 C's and then talk about it. And then they can also ask you to describe the handover process. So you know the handover process. How do you give a handover back home? So you talk about that. You know what happens, So this handover process can be either maybe you're receiving a patient, or you're taking a patient to a different ward, or it can be the handover where you're starting the shift and then you're giving the handover. So you talk about all those things. You say, when a patient comes, when I take the patient to the next ward, I'll introduce myself, I'll introduce my patient, their name, when they came in, their condition, why I'm handing over, the reason for handover, which is continuity of care, of course. And then, you talk about all those things. So if you're receiving the patient, how do you receive the patient? You receive the patient, receive the handover from the nurse who's giving the handover. You make the patient comfortable, you take them to their bed, you do everything that you're supposed to do for them. Or if you're getting a handover from your colleagues, how do you get the handover? Or if you're giving a handover to your colleagues, how do you give the handover? Yeah. And then they can also ask you questions about such as what is your weakness? This is a very common question. So they'll ask you, what is your weakness? So when they ask you this question, please, as you are answering it, answer it in a very intelligent way. What do I mean? So when they say, what is your weakness? Don't say, no, my weakness is that I'm a very slow learner, or my weakness is that when I lose one of my patients, I get very emotional, disturbed, and all those things. This question, you can just answer it. Like, you can talk about a weakness and then turn it into something positive. What do I mean? Let's say, for example, you could say something like, my weakness is that I pay attention to detail. Like, when I'm doing something, I take a lot of time. Already, that's a weakness, because you have limited time. You can't take a lot of time doing one thing. So you can say, I spend a lot of time doing something because I pay attention to detail. Yeah. And then the reason why I do that is because I want what I'm doing to be perfect. I don't want to make mistakes. So you see, you've talked about your weakness, but you've also given a reason why you do that, which is for you to perfect your work, for you not to make mistakes. So the interviewer will be impressed to say, okay, the reason why she pays attention to this and all those little things is because she wants to do a very good job. And yeah, as a nurse, you need to do, in as much as you can you can make mistakes here and there, but as a nurse, you need to be careful on how to do things. You need to ensure that you make minimum mistakes as much as possible. Okay. The other question that you are likely to be asked is they can ask you to give the components of vital signs. You see, very simple question. So what are the components of vital signs? You can talk about temperature, blood pressure, checking the pulse rate, oxygen saturation, all those things. So because those are components of vital signs. Yeah. And then you can also come across a question such as what would you do if you made a medication error? Like if you gave a wrong drug to a patient, what are you supposed to do? You see? So what are you supposed to do? The first thing that you're supposed to do is stop the medication. Stop the medication because it's a wrong medication. Stop the medication. Inform the patient that you gave them a wrong drug and apologize. You're going to do a set of obs on that patient to ensure that they're okay. You're going to give a drug that's going to counteract the effects of the other drug. Yeah. And also the other thing that you're supposed to do is tell the senior nurse, report to your manager that you gave the patient a wrong drug. And then after that, you also have to write an incident report that you gave the wrong drug. And then you can also seek for further education so that in case there's something that you're missing, they can provide further training for you. Yeah, so that's what you're supposed to do if you give a wrong medication. So just research on that and then see how you can answer that question. Yeah. And then the other question that they would ask you is, what would you do if you found the patient on the floor during your shift? Oh, this is a very common question, so please research on this question because you are likely to meet it during an interview. So they would say, what would you do if you found the patient on the floor during your shift? Or if a patient suddenly falls down, what are you supposed to do? So what are you supposed to do as a nurse? So you're going to check for scene safety. Check if the scene is safe for you to approach, because there can be glass, spills or anything nearby such that you going there may also put you in danger. So you check the scene for safety. If the scene is safe for you to approach, you approach the patient. Check if they are breathing. Check here. See if there's movements on the chest, and then call for help. And then begin CPR. Begin CPR while we wait for people who are bringing help to come. Yeah, so this is just like a brief explanation on what they expect you to do if you found your patient on the floor. But just go on Google and then research. You find answers that will be suitable for you during the interview. Okay? Yeah. So you guys, interviews are not very hard because the questions that they ask you are questions that you know answers to, and these are situations that you've been found in. You know how to handle these situations. They can also ask you about how you dispose linen in your hospital. You talk about that. They can ask you about your strength. You talk about that. They can also ask you about how you handle conflicts. Like, how do you handle a conflict with a colleague? How can you handle that? Because they are trying to see how you can do it, like if you're able to handle it in the best way possible. They can also ask you, like, for example, if a patient was complaining that the care that you are giving to them, or if the patient complained about a colleague to you, how do you handle that? So you just say, I'll talk to the patient, get their side of the story, and then I'll apologize to them, because either way, whether they are wrong or right, you still have to apologize. And then I'll talk to my colleague. If they're the ones in the wrong, I'll tell them that what they did was not okay, or if they're not wrong, but maybe they didn't handle the situation assertively, I'll tell them that they didn't handle the situation the way they're supposed to handle it, and then I also encourage them to apologize to the patient. I'll report to the manager and all those things. Yeah. And then they also ask you questions like, what would you do if a patient was prescribed the wrong drug by the doctor? So this, like, it's more like they're trying to see how assertively you can handle the situation when talking to the doctor. So of course you are going to approach the doctor, explain to them to say, I found that you prescribed this drug, but it seems like it's not the right drug, and then you suggest if there's another drug that you feel is right. You know, they will welcome your suggestion. And then, like, the whole point is for you to be assertive when talking to the doctor. You don't have to say, hey, you prescribed the wrong drug, you're not supposed to do this, you can kill the patient, you can do blah blah blah, you can do all those things. They just want to see how assertively you'll be able to talk to your colleague who is the doctor, when telling them to say the drug that they prescribed for the patient is wrong. So just research on all those questions, because these questions that I've told you, 5 out of these questions you're going to find them during an interview. And mostly they don't even ask you a lot of questions, because I think I've talked about more than 10 questions, but trust me, they can only ask you 10 questions or 6 questions. They'll never ask you 10 questions. I don't know, maybe they will, but the interview that I attended, they never asked me a lot of questions. They never asked me 10 questions or more. Yeah. And an interview doesn't go on forever. Mostly it takes about 20 minutes or maximum 30 minutes. Sometimes an interview can take 15 minutes. There's an interview that I did and it only took 15 minutes, and I passed that interview and I was also given a job offer. So an interview doesn't go on forever. It doesn't take an hour. The maximum time you can do an interview is 30 minutes. Thank you so much for watching this video until the end. So like I said, the only thing that you need to do is do your research. Interviews are very easy. You're going to slay through your interview. You're going to pass that interview. Just remember God in everything that you're doing. Pray about it. Prayer is the key in everything that you're doing. Prayer is the key. Okay, so just remember to pray, remember to practice, remember to research, and yeah, you're going to pass your interview. So thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video with your friends who are looking for employment, your friends who have interviews coming up. Share this video, comment if this is the like of content. If you enjoyed this video, comment in the comment section. If this video is very helpful to you, comment in the comment section, like this video. Yeah, thank you so much guys for watching my video. Bye, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now. Bye.